Today is Sunday, May 3rd, 2020. Welcome to episode 39 of Super Dwarf Sundays. This is normally the spot where I would say, hi everyone, I'm Lori with Behavior Education at Spirit Keeper Equine Sanctuary, and this is Tau Ceti from Reach Out Reptiles. However, Tau Ceti ate 2 days ago. He's still in his enclosure. He is awake, but he is not interested in coming out to help me film today. However, let's go take a look at what he's up to right now because he just woke up about 10 minutes ago. And this is TC from Reach Out Reptiles. Hi TC. We missed you for the intro. We're happy that you're doing well. Enjoy your afternoon. See you later, buddy. In the last 2 episodes of Super Dwarf Sunday, we talked about physical enrichment. And I said that for several episodes, we were going to do a series about enrichment for snakes. Some of this may apply to other reptiles and some of it may apply to other animals. Remember that the AZA categorizes enrichment into 5 different ways: food enrichment, cognitive enrichment, physical enrichment, sensory enrichment, and social enrichment. We've already talked for a couple of weeks about physical enrichment, and a lot of what we do here at our facility really focuses on physical enrichment. Lots of our videos that aren't specifically about enrichment show many of the activities and the items that we use for that purpose. The first week when we talked about physical enrichment, Tau Ceti was kind enough to demonstrate some of our enrichment items for you, and we talked about several ways that you can give your snake physical enrichment. In last week's episode, I followed up by answering your questions that arose from that initial video. This week, we are going to be talking about food enrichment, also known as dietary enrichment. Now, this is something that can be provided to your snakes in a number of ways. It can be as simple as varying your snake's diet. So instead of feeding just mice or just rats all the time, you could alternate and feed rats and then throw in a mouse one feeding and then rats again. But you can mix that up. You can also mix up their feeding by substituting other food items for rodents. So on occasion, you could give your snakes a bird or an egg or fish or insects or worms. And that's going to depend on your snake's biology and what would be safe for them to eat. But this is just another way that you can vary your snake's diet, give them some variety in the type of meal that they're eating. I personally do not feed my snakes live prey. However, feeding live prey items to your snakes does fall under dietary enrichment. This is an option for some people and some institutions, depending on the laws where you live, what the facility's internal policies are, and your own personal ethics. Food enrichment is more than just feeding your snake. It should be encouraging your snake to perform specific things that its species would do in the wild. It should encourage species-specific hunting behaviors or species-specific foraging behaviors. It should be stimulating your snake's use of chemoreception and vision. In some cases, it may stimulate hearing, and it should be introducing your snake to novelty so that it encourages adaptive learning. You can do this by varying the way that you present your food to the snakes. You can use mazes, puzzle feeders, scent trails, hide prey within the snake's normal enclosure, or you can use devices other than tongs to offer the prey items to your snake. These activities can be set up inside or outside of your snake's enclosure, depending on your individual snake, what's safe for them, and what they're comfortable with. Ideally, food enrichment should be extending your snake's feeding time and encouraging your snake to do a little work in order to obtain their food, instead of just having it magically appear in front of their mouth so that they can eat it. The snake may spend several minutes or even hours searching for the prey, locating it, getting to it, catching it, and then finally eating it. So you can set some of these situations up to mimic behaviors that your snake would do if they were hunting or foraging for food in the wild. So you can set up a scent trail, and at the end of that scent trail, they may find a prey item, and depending on the species of snake, they may then get into an ambush position and wait for that prey item to move. Or they may just go ahead and strike at the prey item, or just open their mouth and start eating the prey item. It's really going to depend. In the videos that you're about to see, which I will do a voiceover for, so I will narrate for you what's happening, you're going to see some different behaviors. You're going to see some different hunting styles. So we're obviously focusing on Tau Ceti, our reticulated python today. Tau Ceti hunts in a very specific way. He does pick up scents very well. If there's movement anywhere, Tau Ceti is easily distracted by that visual cue. In the videos that you're about to see, you're going to see some different clips of Tau Ceti doing some foraging exercises, our snake on a table exercise, and then we're going to compare his hunting activity and his foraging activity to that of a carpet python and a corn snake. And then I also include a clip of one of my Morelia Bredl doing a puzzle feeder. I've included information about an excellent puzzle feeding article in the International Association of Animal Behavior Consultants Journal. I think it's in the fall of 2019 issue. It was written by a colleague of mine who also does animal training, including training snakes, Peter Amelia. And it's a great article about puzzle feeding your snakes. So I'm going to include the title of that and the link to that in the video. I hope you enjoy these videos. I hope you find them educational. As always, if you have any questions about them, please contact me. And if there's enough questions that come in, we can do a follow-up video to this one next week. So without any further ado, here are the video segments that I've chosen for this week's edition of Super Dwarf Sunday. Here I have our snake on a table foraging exercise set up for Tau Ceti, and I wasn't trying to be sneaky or hide anything from him. I allowed him to watch me set it up. So he could have easily seen where those prey items were hidden, and they aren't hidden very well. One is in this blue container on the left, and one is on that orange cat toy on the right. I was really excited to see that Tau Ceti was so interested in what was going on, that he was using his sense of smell, and that he came right out of his enclosure and started engaging with this exercise. When he was much, much younger and we introduced him to this exercise and similar exercises, he was not thrilled about it, and he was very reluctant to participate. He wouldn't come out of his enclosure. If I placed him on the table, he wouldn't move around, or he would want to go back into his enclosure. Now that he's 10 months old, he's been exposed to a lot of experiences over the months that we've had him. He's gained resiliency and confidence in regards to novel situations. And so this exercise today, which is the first time he's done it since he was a very small baby, is showing me just how much this animal has changed over the last few months. He is actively smelling those prey items, and that tongue is just going crazy. I have sped up sections of this video, and I've cut out several sections of the video because Tau Ceti is not a fast forager. He is a very cautious forager, and he takes his time following the scent trail. He takes his time investigating the items between him and where he's smelling the scent coming from. And he also gets easily distracted by motion in the room that comes from me. So any movement I make, he looks at me and he starts to move in my direction. I tried to be as still as possible because I didn't want to interfere with his foraging exercise, but Tau Ceti is just very easily distracted by what I'm doing. And there were several times during this exercise that my movement caused him to look at me and move in my direction, and he abandoned the scent trail that he was obviously following. The total time that we spent on this exercise on this particular day was about 2.5 hours. And that's fine. That's part of why you do the exercise. You want to make the feeding experience for them extend. So instead of it taking a matter of seconds to present the food on tongs, have the snake strike at the food and take it and then eat it in maybe a few minutes, you're causing the snake to be physically and mentally active for several minutes or even several hours and then finally eat their food. That's one of the points of this entire exercise. The food item that he has focused in on is in that blue basket. And it's clear that he knows it's there. And in just a minute, you're going to see him start to go inside the blue basket. And I thought, okay, he knows the food is in there. He smells the food. He is going to see the food, strike at the food, and eat. And I was afraid when he struck at the food that he would knock that basket off the table. I was sitting across the room on a couch, and I thought, well, I didn't think of that before. Maybe I better put my hand on the bottom of the basket so when he strikes at the prey, that the basket and everything doesn't fly off the table. And so what you're going to see here in a minute is me put my hand up to the back of the basket, and that actually caused TC to do something interesting. So what you see as soon as I put my hand up to the basket is he struck at my hand from the other side of the basket. He struck at that motion. And I found that very interesting. He is literally right on top of the rodent in the basket, and he stayed that way forever. And the carpet python in that enclosure behind where I have this set up was just going crazy because obviously he could smell the rodents I had out and he could see this exercise happening right in front of him. And you can catch glimpses of that snake moving around in his enclosure on the other side of the basket and the box. Here I tried to move the basket thinking that would stimulate Tau Ceti to strike at the prey or to at least open his mouth and start eating it, but it did not. And as I said before, I've cut parts of this out. So a long time has transpired before I finally take the basket away and present the food to him on tongs. He immediately takes the prey off the tongs, eats it, and then fixates on me as if looking for another prey item. Every move I make, he is watching me and he is coming towards me. I'm sitting across from the table and he just keeps moving in my direction. And I got up to start cleaning up and put him away, and he was coming towards me like he thought I had more food. So I chose to use the hook to put him away for everyone's safety, and so we didn't have any miscommunication. But this exercise clearly showed how fixated he was on me and my motion, and how he's used to the food coming from me in some way, and he's also used to the food moving before he strikes at it and eats it. I had to let this carpet python conduct the exercise when TC was finished because he had been going berserk in this enclosure the whole time TC was out for about 2.5 hours. He found the food right away, but then he hovered over it for 7 or 8 minutes. And the same thing as TC, he just wasn't going to eat it until it moved. And so I grabbed it with the tongs and wiggled it a little, and he immediately took it and started eating. Now, this was really fortuitous for me that he wanted to engage in this activity today because it gave me an opportunity to refill his water, spot clean his enclosure, get some old shed out, refresh his humidity box, and do some much needed maintenance because this snake's not friendly and it's difficult to get him to come out of his enclosure. I usually have to wait for him to be in his humid hide and then take the whole box out to clean. But he really wanted to engage in this activity today, and he wasn't bothered by me being around him at all once he was engaged in it and eating. But as soon as he was finished, he just put himself away. I did not have to do a thing. And so this snake made life easy on me because he conducted this activity today, and it gave me a chance to get some things done I needed to get done in his enclosure. The next snake that you're going to see is a corn snake. And if you will notice, when the corn snake's doing the activity, he hunts differently than the pythons. The pythons footage was very sped up, and I cut lots of it out because they were slower and more methodical about following the scent trail. And then when they found the prey, they did not strike at it. They just moved around it and moved around it and moved around it, and they never struck at the prey until I moved the prey. I wiggled it or I picked it up on the tongs. And that's okay. That's the way that they hunt. They find prey, they get in an ambush position in the area, and they wait for the prey to move underneath them, and they strike at it. This colubrid, this corn snake, finds the prey, and he doesn't care that it's not moving. He immediately starts eating prey items when he finds them. The challenge that he had this time was it was inside that hamster tube, and he had to figure out how to get his body in there, get it in a good position to start eating the prey and swallow it down in that narrow tube. So what he ended up doing is going all the way through the tube, turning around, grabbing the prey by the head, pulling it out of the tube, and then finishing his meal. And of these 3 snakes on this day, he was the fastest. And this isn't a race. It's just interesting to see the behavioral differences between the pythons and the colubrids and the way that they hunt and forage, and in the way that they actually accept the prey item once they find it. Here we are with TC about 10 days later, doing almost the identical exercise. I did set it up a little bit differently. He was much, much slower to exit his enclosure this time. And the rodent is still in the blue basket. I wanted to put it in the exact same spot to see if he would eat it on his own this time, to see if anything would be sped up during the process. But he was actually slower this time. And it was very difficult to get him to stop looking at me. I'm sitting to his right or to the left of the frame as we're looking at it. And he came to that end of the enclosure. He took his head off that corner of the table, and he kept looking at me until I finally got up and moved to the other side of the table to get him to refocus on the table exercise and see if that would help him pick up that scent smell from the basket. Once he does pick up the scent and he starts engaging, which is what's happening here, it doesn't take him long to decide that he's going to go down onto the table and get into the basket. Even though he had set his sights and smell on that basket and was intent on going in it, he wasn't exactly Speed Racer, and I cut out minutes and minutes and minutes of this footage. This is so cute. He gets inside the basket and he starts moving around in there and sticking his nose and tongue out of the holes in the basket. It was really something to see. However, he's right on top of the rodent. Once again, it's right underneath him. I peeked in there a couple of times, and he was literally touching it, smelling it, and he just wasn't striking at it or taking it. And then he comes out of the basket, as you see here, and the rodent is still inside. So he investigated it, he sniffed around, and then he abandoned it. He comes out of the basket, and he's looking at me again, and he starts coming towards me. I allow him to crawl around the table, crawl around the basket, tongue flick towards me, look at me, come towards me. I allow him the freedom and latitude to do what he wants for a few minutes, because the exercise isn't about the eating. This exercise is about him staying engaged with an activity that extends his foraging time, that extends his feeding time. However, I ran out of time, and I ended up feeding him the prey item off tongs, which he immediately took and ate because I had to go do something else. Just remember, the point of the activity is not how fast can he find the food, how fast can he eat the food. It's about engaging in the activity itself. This is a clip of a carpet python who is engaging in a hunting exercise in one of our exercise spaces. I set him loose up there, and he moved around the exercise space, caught the scent trail of this rodent that I have in this plastic container. He finds it, he investigates it, and then he strikes at it and eats it. This is a snake who's done this 3 or 4 times before, and I no longer have to move the prey for him or interfere in the activity at all. This is one of my Morelia Bredl who had been engaged in a puzzle feeding exercise. A puzzle feeder is something that the animal has to manipulate part of in order to get inside and get to the food. So in this case, he had to open the flaps on that box. This is one of our female corn snakes who's typically extremely shy and doesn't come out when people are in the room, but who is very active within her enclosure when she's alone. This is a puzzle feeder that is placed inside of her enclosure, which she has to figure out how to get inside and then get the rodent off of this plastic thing I have at the bottom that has grooves in it, and the rodent was placed in between 2 of the grooves. She's very good at this, and it has helped build her confidence. It's really amazing that she's doing this with me standing right next to her, because she isn't one that's taken to target training very well, because target training involves the handler or the trainer being in the room next to the snake. She's not good at taking prey off tongs. It makes her nervous when humans are present. But this puzzle feeding exercise has done her wonders, because she engages in the puzzle feeder while I'm standing right in the room. I'm right next to her taking this video. And not only does she figure the puzzle feeder out and eat the rodent, but she stays out and engages with the puzzle for minutes and minutes after she's eaten it. And I'm standing right here. And so this has just been an amazing way to build her confidence. Well, everybody, thank you so much for watching. While I was doing the voiceovers, Tau Ceti actually woke up and came to the door. I opened the door and he came out of his enclosure. So he was nice enough to join us as I said goodbye to you for this, our 39th edition of Super Dwarf Sunday. I hope that you found that educational. I hope it gave you food for thought, so to speak. There are so many things that you can do with food enrichment and dietary enrichment. I just hit on a few of them. I encourage you to read Peter's article. And if you go to the AZA's care manuals for the Eastern indigo snake and the timber rattlesnake, it talks about food enrichment in those care manuals. And I believe those are available for public viewing online as PDFs. But there are just so many ways that you can be creative about how you present the food to your snake, and be a little bit creative in what food items you're presenting to your snake. As long as it's healthy for your snake and they'll eat it, and some of this may depend on the species of snake, and you may have to check with your veterinarian, but there isn't anything wrong with varying the food items, as long as it's something that they can digest and that is safe for them to eat and that they will eat. I have some snakes that will eat anything I feed them, and I have other snakes that will only eat one thing. I have one Morelia Bredl that will only eat rats. I have one jungle carpet python that will only eat mice. And then I have a whole bunch of snakes that will eat pretty much anything I feed them. And so be creative not only in how you feed your snake, but what you feed your snake. And remember that even if you have a snake that's not comfortable or that you're unable to get out of the enclosure, you can do some of these exercises by putting things in their enclosure for them to do. So once again, thank you so much for joining us for another edition of Super Dwarf Sunday. Until next time, everybody, please remember to always be kind and love your animals.